Okay, so the first thing about Uno platform is, what is this Uno platform and how will you access it? So if you go to browser, any mobile browser or a computer browser, you have to type this URL, which is very simple, theunoplatform.com, platform.com. Okay. Now, UNO, in some places you will see this as an acronym, UNO. UNO is a, I think, French word which means one or number one. Okay, so one integrated platform. That is the primary purpose of building this platform, where we wanted to solve two problems together. One is creation and maintenance and upgrade, enhancement of web applications as well as mobile applications. And the second bigger problem is hosting. Hosting is a big challenge, and hosting is not just about building the binaries and putting it on a server. It is more complicated in case of web or mobile applications, typically mobile applications which are client server based. And then if you have a much larger user base, then scale, right? And many security and several other problems come into picture. So for small application, which is only for internal users, there will be less things to worry about. But as soon as you open this up for the larger user beyond your organizations, things become much more difficult, especially when you have multi-geography user base, like your users are in India and America and Europe and Australia, right? It becomes much more challenging because your servers have to be deployed appropriately. The database has to be deployed and managed. It should have proper setup for redundancy and speed and all that, and backup. So many things come into picture. Typically, if you have heard of DevOps word, then development and operations are two big challenges for any application development and deployment. And this one platform helps you manage both in one single place. And moreover, everything in your browser. More importantly, most of the things that you want to do, you can do it using even your mobile phone browser. So just imagine creating a web application and making it available to any person in the world just by using your mobile phone whenever you are free. You don't have to be in your office, sitting in front of your large computer screens and doing everything. You can do all of this on a mobile phone when you are traveling, when you are just waiting for your bus or waiting for your friend, right? You can still work on your application creation. You can manage the infrastructure around that, monitor the hosts. If the host has gone down, you can restart it, you can refresh it. So many things, complete dev and ops manageable through the single platform. And that's why it is called UNO, or integrated platform. Now, we have tried to give UNO a different name as well, because that describes this objective, which is called Universal No Code App Orchestration Platform. So no code app is a very common trend these days, which allows you to create and host applications without, almost without writing any source code, using any programming language. So typically, you can build an application using UI features, drag and drop some settings, and you're done, right? So that's a no-code application. For example, you want to create um, an app which takes users' input and then you store it, you see the listing of the data submitted, and then you want to run some analysis on that. Google Forms is available for you. So you can create a screen, which is a form, and pass the URL to your target user base. They will all use that screen to fill in the data, and all that data is stored on the server and available to you for view. You can download it as an Excel file or Google Sheets, right? So you get all that very easily done without knowing or using any programming language. It's pretty simple, straightforward. So that's one example of no-code platform. So typically, no-code platforms are good enough to build a system where you are mostly doing these kind of operations: create, search, view, and sometimes edit. Sometimes you also do deletion, but deletion is very rare operation. Has to be done very carefully, because once you delete the data, it is almost impossible to recover. So there is a concept of soft delete that we can follow, and purposely we have omitted that here because delete is a big no-no in modern world. So you generally create the records, you most of the time search, view, and occasionally you modify the records. Right, so this platform gives you a lot of out-of-box features to create CRUD kind of application: create, read, update, delete, leave the delete behind. What you have to basically do is define your data structure. That also you have to do using these out-of-box screens in a general business term. You don't have to think too much from the typical developer's point of view. Just like a business user, what is your business data structure? Define it with relations and everything, and then you are done. Because it gives you so many out-of-box features, including the CRUD screens. Apart from that, it gives you many other common features which you will generally need in every application. The most common feature that you require is user management. Almost all of the web applications are multi-user. So you need your user to be registered, then they should be allowed to sign in, and then you have some access control, which user will be able to do what kind of activity, what kind of screens, what kind of content should be visible to which user. So role-based access control, right? So user profile management and access control is one of the most common features required in every application. This platform gives you that capability out of box, and the interesting thing is that is extensible as well. So you can even customize how to allow user to sign in or even sign up, and then on the access management, you can extend it further. It has a lot of extensibility options available. We will learn about those gradually as we go through more complex use case scenarios, but for the normal regular use cases, the capability that it gives you out of box will be good enough. It starts with zero access, right? Zero trust. So nobody is getting access to anything except the owner of the application. Then owner decides who will get to see or view or do what through the access management configurations, right? So it is in full secure mode. It starts in full secure mode, and then you start opening it. The next thing is traceability and auditability. It allows you to have a trace of changes that are being made in your business objects. That becomes very important in some of the business scenarios. So you can do that. The next big thing is about data management. I told you about the infrastructure side where you have to think of data scale and availability and all that. It gives you an option to back up your data and restore it on demand. In case of disasters, you can restart or restate your application very quickly. Application version management through application templates. Now, this platform gives you that capability as well. So you create a base application like a basic skeleton application for a domain, or which has some basic features which can be extended in different ways, different directions. For example, if you are planning to create a e-commerce platform or e-commerce product which can be customized for different customers, you create a base application using the templating feature. You create a template out of that, and then for every of your customer, create your application for that customer based on that template, which basically initializes that new application with not many out-of-box custom features, and then you build on top of that. Or if you are trying to have multiple versions of your own application and deploy it for different user bases. For example, one set of users want to stay on your older version of application, while some other user or customers want to come on the latest version. You can support these scenarios as well. So you can have multiple versions of the application hosted simultaneously on the same platform, and that gives you a lot of power to support a variety of customers. Another aspect is subscription management. Now, what is subscription management? Many of your features will be made available to users on pay-per-use basis, for example. So you want to build application features, but you want to make them available only to select users who are really interested and perhaps ready to pay for that. That is where subscription management becomes very useful. Okay, so that is again a common scenario which will be useful in almost all of your commercial applications that you want to build. The next feature that is very commonly made available or required in applications are notifications. In-app notifications as well as email-based notifications, and now we have SMS or WhatsApp-based notifications as well, commonly used in different applications. So in this platform, we have two types of notifications supported: in-app and email-based notifications. And you can build your own custom notification feature as well. And last but not the common feature that is required in most of the commercial application is payment gateway integration. So it allows you to integrate with payment gateway of your choice. Out of box, it has some integrations, and on demand, we can support integration with other payment gateways as well, right? So it gives you a lot of out-of-box features, but in cases where you are still not satisfied or you want more customization just on the UI side, maybe you're happy with the backend features, but you want to have a custom UI, a different experience for different user base, say small screen or mobile users versus desktop based users. You want to have customized experiences. You can get all that done by using the custom screen feature, that is available through a VCV kind of editor, where you basically use the drag and drop feature to design your screens and hook that to different scenarios. Now, when I say scenario, you can actually reuse your screen across different features of the application. In fact, you can create small screen snippets, which is useful as a reusable component. Now, talking a little technical, if you're familiar with React or even HTML, you know there are small code snippets that can be used to build a more complex screen or screen pieces, which can be used again and again, right? So that's the component model. So you can create such components as well. That is actually for much more advanced use cases. And we will talk about that gradually as we hit that time. Now, on the backend side, suppose you want more control on the backend workflows and all that, you have options of functions and triggers, and you also have two types of triggers. So functions are typically a small code snippet which can be used in different scenarios. And how do you do that? You basically use functions in different triggers. Now, what is trigger? Trigger is a specific situation where you want to run a piece of code or a logic. So function is that logic unit, and trigger is the situation in which you want to execute that logic. What could be the trigger? Trigger could be either user interaction driven, which we call, or entity state or data state driven. Suppose you are creating a data object and you want to execute a particular logic when the data is saved, that data object is saved or persisted in the data store. You want to run a piece of logic, which you can do that using, here we have the concept of entity triggers. You can do that. The second possible scenario for triggers is time-based, right? So you want to take a data backup and you want to do that in off hours, say post midnight. You can do that through scheduled triggers, right? So it gives you a lot of out-of-box features. At the same time, it gives you customization of UI and it gives you customization at the business logic layer. Practically, it gives you full control over your application creation and maintenance. At the same time, it reduces a lot of burden from you in terms of hosting and scaling and security and several other aspects on that side, right? So we will learn about each of them gradually, case by case. Okay. Now, to use this platform, you have to first of all create an account on a application where you will have to first go and create your account. If you don't have your account already created, if you have already created your account, then you don't have to create again. You just sign in and then you start managing your applications. All right. So where do you do that? So there are two options. You click on this or this menu, manage apps, which will take you to a different application, which is called Uno Apps or Application Manager. So this is a part of the platform. Application Manager is one of the parts, one of the many features of this whole platform. This feature allows you to manage your applications, create and do some basic settings, manage the backup schedule, manage the status of the application. You may want to suspend the application for some time. right? So you do that application lifecycle management from here. Now on the deployment side, if you want to manage something, you will have to use an application called platform. So you access that again, going back to the Uno platform portal, click on this menu, manage platform from here or at the bottom, and you come to Uno deployments or Uno platform application, and here you will be managing your servers and your application deployments and various jobs, etc. Now, access to this may be restricted, but access to application manager is open to anyone. At this stage, you have to only create your account. Once you create your account, you will be able to create many applications, right? So to create your account, on the home page, click on this create account option, and then you are good to begin. Now, you may be part of an organization which already has an account, right? So you don't have to always create an account and then start building application. You may be a member of an existing account, or you can actually be given access to your account, or you can grant access to somebody else, induct that person as a developer in your account. So all that is possible gradually. So I'm not going to create a new account. I will basically log in to the account that we already have for PRME Technologies, and we will use it. But account creation is very simple. Just give the name of the organization and your ID password. Email ID is preferred, and a password which should be complex enough for you to securely use. Okay, once you provide this information, your profile is created and that is associated to your organization's account. Okay, so I already have my account created. So what I will do is I will, instead of creating an account, I will do sign in. I'll talk about sign up little later, but let's now sign in to the application manager. So I have already created an account here for PRME using my email ID. I need to provide my user ID and password to sign in, and it is now allowing me to log in. Okay, so you see here is my account name or organization name, and I have a couple of options. What I can do here is again explained, which I have already explained to you on the portal capabilities. So basically in this part of the platform, you manage your apps and you manage your templates. What are apps? Apps, as you can easily imagine, it's an application that you want to create and host, and templates are the basically a version of app which you want to retain for reuse in two ways. You want to create derivative app, or you want to have a version of the app preserved so that you can deploy it again for a specific customer. Okay, I have already created two applications here. One is called construction manager, another is called quote your price. But let's try to create an application in this screen. So to create a new application, you have to press this plus button in the top right corner. And then it asks you for a couple of information. It asks you for the name of the application and a unique ID. Now this unique ID is something that you should be careful about. This ID that you give has to be unique across entire system, entire platform. Okay, so that's the first thing. And it should be easy enough for you to remember, because this will become the primary part of your application's URL. Okay, so it should be sensible enough, self-explanatory and all, right? So instead of creating one here, I will take you back to the list where you will see what we have done. So construction expense manager is the name of the application. So for that, we have used CEM as the ID, right? It makes sense. CEM uh, indicates construction expense manager. So short form of that. Similarly, for quote to price, we have QUP. Now, there could be many clients who would want to create an application like construction manager. Okay. Now, if they want to use CEM, it will be difficult because CEM is already used. So another suggestion for you is to prefix your application with something which indicates or which relates to your account, right? So that is how you create a namespace for your apps. Say, for example, I say peer me underscore CEM. That would be assuring the uniqueness across the platform, right? So you can try with different IDs, and if it is accepted, fine. Otherwise, try to follow this convention. A prefix for your account followed by a short name or short ID for which indicates the purpose or name of the application as the ID. You're free to use application name, and good thing is you can change that name at a later stage as well. So not to worry too much about the application name, but ID is permanent. You cannot change it because it will be used in almost all other places as a reference to your application. So be careful about that. Do not overcomplicate it. Keep it unique and keep it simple. Okay, so when you are creating the application, you have to provide the application name and ID. If you go to other tabs, these are the primary details that you have to provide. And then you may provide other details. What are the other details? So you can decide to extend your application from an existing template. We'll talk about template once again, and then perhaps we'll come back to this to see how you can extend from an existing template. All right, so let's see what are the other details that I may provide about the application. Now, two things. One is the database connection URL and the app domain name. Now, what happens is if you have a custom domain registered for your app and you want to, suppose user, you have registered a domain called qup.com. Okay, and once your user, your customer types in qup.com, they should be coming back to this application that you have created. By default, it should land you to this application. Otherwise, what happens is it will take you to the Uno platform's homepage, which is the portal. But if you want your user to get mapped to this application directly, you have to provide the app domain name. We'll see a case for this as well. The database connection URL is more important. By default, Uno platform gives you the data store of its own. Okay, of course, you have certain limitations on that, and if you want to use that forever, fine, you can use it. In future, you may have to pay a little for usage of the data store because it comes at a cost. But if you have your own database, you can provide the URL of that here so that you are in full control of your database. The only limitation at this stage is it has to be a MongoDB database, which should be accessible from this portal's IP address. I will provide you the IP address, which needs to be whitelisted on your MongoDB site so that this portal or this platform should be able to connect to your database. And here you shall provide the connection URL, which should include the credentials as well. I'll show you an example little later. Okay, so if you want to use the platform's data store, you have to keep it empty. If you want to use your own custom database host, you need to provide the URL for that, and all of the application data will be stored in your provided database. Fine. Right, so for simple things, we don't need it, and these are optional. The only two mandatory things are application name and ID, and then save, and it creates an application and immediately hosts it for you, right? So that's the power. I'm not going to create that because I've already created a couple of applications, so I will take that for example, all right? But as soon as you save it, it will create an application for you with a unique URL. It will show up in your My Apps listing. And once you see that, you can just click on either of these two, either application name or ID, to open that application. All right. So here I have already created construction expense manager, and I'm going to take that as an example for understanding the application configuration further. But before going there, any questions?
No, sir. Questions?
All right. So now I will take you to construction manager application. So application manager, this application or this part of the platform is used only to initialize the application and manage the status and manage the backup status. Now backup status by default is inactive when you create the application. After this, you can edit and you see this backup schedule tab enabled or visible to you. And here you can define the backup schedule. We will get into this once again later. At this stage, let's skip it and let's get into the actual application. All right. So your application is created. You click on this and it opens a new URL for you. And in this case, the application that we are seeing is highly customized. And this customization is done over the period of time, but all the customization has been done using the features that are available inside the browser. So platform features which are available to you in the browser itself. The custom screen that you're seeing right now is for sign in. The regular sign in screen is different. You can see the out of box screen versus the customized screen. So quote your price is in the standard out of box state right now. If I go to sign in here, this is also a little customized. Yeah, this is also customized, but standard sign-in screen looks like the sign-in screen that you saw for this Uno platform. If I come here and see this, the typical sign-in screen will look like this. If I sign out of application manager and sign in or sign up again, that's the standard sign in or sign up screen. So this is the sign in screen and this is the sign up screen, which is coming out of box. Now, if you are not happy with it or you want a difference, you can customize. So construction manager is a highly customized application, and that's why we are using this for understanding the capability of the platform. Now, it has a lot of customization done for both small screen user, which is typically mobile application or mobile user, versus desktop based user, which is large screen user. Right. So I will try to cover both sides of the screens and the features, what will be available to a small screen user versus what will be available to a large screen user, and how we can see the comparison. Now, I can actually do that demonstration from here itself. So let me start this application. Now, what is the base URL for this? The base URL for your application, custom application that you have created, is the unoplatform.com/ the application ID. Now, if I go back to this, and if you notice again, I need to log in. And if I go to my apps, for construction manager, the ID is CEM. So for the application, the URL will be the unoplatform.com/CEM, and that is my URL here. All right, so I can bookmark this URL, and now just to see how it will show up on a small screen, I can use the Google Chrome's capability to simulate that small screen. I'm accessing the same application URL, and let us see what happens here. So right now it is already starting with the logged in user. Let me sign out. It maintains the cache. Your session is cached in small screen. Sometimes in certain scenario, it is cached in a large screen as well. Okay, so you basically land on this screen and this type of screen if you are accessing it on a small screen client like a mobile phone, and you see something like this, the same application, something like this when you are accessing the application on your large screen, right? So you can see the difference. Now, for this screen, it looks very similar, but let me try to log in and show you a little more difference. Okay, so a user is logging in on the large screen, and after successful login, now here the user in this particular application, the first thing that a login user has to do is set a default project. Now there is a concept of project, it's a business object. So you have to set a project as default project, because everything else will be in the context of that project. So I need to set it as a default. So I choose A4 Dreams as the default project right now. And then it takes me to the dashboard. The content may not make enough sense to you for now, but I'm just using it for the demonstration purpose. So if I log in, if the same user logs in here, here also it will ask the user first time to set a particular project as default, but now you see the look and feel is slightly different. If you observe how the project screen showed up or project listing showed up, I will try to bring it again. Here it is showing like a table, and here it is showing like a list with a very different UI layout. Okay, so here is the name of the project and description, followed by a couple of menu options, and all that in a small card view, and then cards are listed one by one, and then you have a button to create the new project, right? So you can create a new project, or you can go back to your project listing. Here also, I can create a new project by clicking on this plus button. This plus button is looking different than what you see in the mobile view, right? So you can have really different look and feel experience for different users, and all that is, once again, I'm emphasizing on customization. You can customize it to any extent that you want, right? So I set this as default, and then this becomes my dashboard. Here I set the same A4 Dreams as default, and this becomes my dashboard. Similar, but you see the layout here. It is horizontally laid out. The two charts, pie charts or donut charts, are horizontally laid out, and here these are vertically laid out. So because on mobile screens you scroll vertically, so your content is also laid out vertically. You also see the menus displayed differently. Here you have menus at the bottom. Here you have menus at the top. It also shows the app title and login, logout, profile, everything here. Here it is visible through settings. Then you have menus. So right, so very different screens. All right, so we'll come back to the users screen or app features one by one once again. But what you see here, what you were actually looking at is end user's experience. And end user is different from your development user, right? So your same application URL will be accessed by your developer as well as your end user, right? So there's no two URLs that, okay, you have a URL for developers and you have a URL for system admins and you have a URL for end users. No, it's one single URL. That's why it is called one platform. You have less complexities in terms of remembering what you have to do, and you make changes and it is live immediately. So your deployment cycle is almost zero, right? The time taken to deploy a change is, most cases, it is zero. Having said that, you may have an option to make changes and keep it optional for some users, make it available to certain users and all that through access control. You can enable or disable certain features only for select users. All that is possible through access control. All right, so what you are seeing here are some menus, which are, these are business users or end users menus that are configured and made available. But for developers, there will be certain menus available out of box, which will be accessible only to the application owner, which is the default developer. And then if you add more developers to your team, they may also get some of those menu options depending on what capabilities of development or what features of development you want to share with specific user. Okay, so let me log out for the time being, or rather let it be like this, and I will log in as the owner user, application owner user. So I created the application using this profile, right? pe.ritesh@peerme.tech. When I create the application, a new application, a user with same ID will be created in the new application. Now, this profile and the application that I create and a user profile created, there are two separate entities, right? So these are not connected, but it just creates a profile with the same ID that you have in the application manager app. These are all apps, right? So application manager is an app which is also built on the same platform and hosted here, right? So every application has its own user account and access management, which is not actually shared between applications. Every application has a context, a limited context where you have the user. Each application has your own user base, your own role access for definitions. Okay. So for convenience, this system takes the current user's profile and creates a default profile here. And the default profile will have your user ID itself as the password. However, you can change it on your first login or even later. So I have changed it, and this password could be different from my password in application manager app, right? So remember, these are separate user profiles. You may have same ID, but internally these are separate data entities. So passwords and settings will not be carried over. These are completely separate. Okay. So, all right. Now I don't actually log in through this. I log in with the default user ID that is added in every application. So apart from the ID that you have used in application manager, every application will get a admin user also added, right? So admin user is added and you can start, admin is a super admin. So you can start with that, or you can start with your app manager's ID. Both are possible for initial use. So I'm logging in as admin user, and here I get to see that many new options. Now, some of the options that you see here are also visible to a regular user, right? So dashboard, transaction account, setting reports. That is also visible to admin user. Basically, admin user is a super admin, so we'll have access to practically everything. You also see some of the menus that are not visible to a regular user, like report, category type, and currency. How is this visible here and how these are created? Are those custom created or coming out the box? That we will see. But the most important thing that you get, which is basically a developer capability, are these four options: app config, data, design, and access. All right. So these actually give you the developer capabilities. These will be available to you if you are the app owner, or if you are provided access to one or more of these options by the app owner, right? You are a regular user, but you are provided access to any of these options. You will see those corresponding options, menu options in your profile when you log in. Okay, we'll get into that later when we talk about the access management. So at this stage, I will just focus on the single developer, which is the admin basically. So super user for this application. There are no this application is built using a single user account, no multiple developers, but we can add and enable more developers very quickly. So we can have a team of developers working on the same application. All right. Any questions so far?
No questions, sir.
All good? Okay, fine. So now the first And most important thing in any application is when we started the application creation by creating the application here in application manager app, we just provided a couple of values, or practically we just provided the name of the application. We didn't provide anything else. Of course, ID was also provided, but we want to provide little more information to begin with. For example, I want to provide a logo for the application. That's a very common scenario for any application. Now you see this application has a custom logo, which shows up here, which shows up in the browser title bar here, browser, yeah, title. Every application has a logo, you see. So construction manager has its own logo, and then plenty of other configurations about the application. Now, you generally start with that. So how do you see it? What is there, and what will be the customized value? So to get to see the app config, I need to click on this menu, and it will bring up a new screen, which shows me what is the current state of application configuration. So name of the application is Construction Manager. It has not changed, so it was there, and the same name was copied over. However, if I want to change, suppose I say it is not Construction Manager, it is Construction Expense Manager, and I want to change the name of the application, I can very easily change here. ID. ID is CEM, it is not changeable. Now I want to have a small one-liner description. For example, application manager has a one-liner description which says enjoy the happiness. Something like that, like a punchline. I can provide that in the description, which will show up just below the application name. Then the logo. I can provide a logo image, I can upload a logo image, and it will start showing up in this header as well as in the title bar. A little bit about the contact email ID. If you want to show that at the bottom of the screen, we can provide contact email, but that will be visible only if I have the footer enabled. I can show you in application manager. Here you see dev@rituno.com with the contact form. So if you click on this, it will initiate the mail client and you can send an email. Similarly, for any of your custom application, you can have a contact email ID for your application. It's like a webmaster email ID. All right. Then you have some of the public actions. I'll talk about this later, but normally what happens is, I told you initially that it starts with zero trust. That means almost nothing will be accessible to a user, which is either unauthenticated or even an authenticated user. Now, if you do not want to even enable the sign up option, right? Self-service sign up, you don't want, then what you do is you prohibit that from here. So here in public action, by default though, sign up and sign in are a public action. So these are the actions, these are the screens that will be accessible to every user. But if you want to suppress sign up, you can do that by just limiting the sign up public actions to sign in. For example, if you go to portal, here you have sign in, but you don't have sign up. And why is that happening? Because only sign in is listed as public action in this application. By the way, this portal is also an application created and hosted on this platform, right? So platform uses itself to highlight or to make other features available. All right, so you can manage that through public actions. If here I have sign in and sign up is disabled. So if I come to this URL once again, you won't see a sign up here. You only see sign in. However, sign up is available here differently. Now, regular sign up will take you to a sign up screen I showed you here, which asked you for name, ID, and password. But here I have a custom sign up screen. That's why the default sign up has been disabled, right? So a custom sign up is like this in this application, which says, give me the account name, owner name, email ID, password, and currency. Because the construction manager app is for a business, so normally you should have business information or business name and a business owner name and email ID. And then you will have different projects, construction projects run under that business, right? So you want to have multiple projects under the same business. So that is how you actually initiate your sign up in this system, all right? And then internally, you can add more users. So these are like internal users. There is a feature for users, and I can show you that as a regular user. If I logged in, I have a you manage users feature. So user management is done in this application internally. It is not using the out-of-box user management feature. However, for some initial users, it is using the out-of-box feature. In fact, the internal managed user is an extension of out-of-box user management, right? Slightly complicated, but I'll explain you later. Okay, so coming back, so I just limited the public actions to sign in, so sign up doesn't show up, the default sign up. Now, home screen. What is home screen? So if you started with a application, basically let's understand the structure of this application. So every application, once it is created, it comes up with a base layout. The base layout has a header section, which has a logo, if logo is provided, name of the application, so, one-liner description or tagline, and then some of the menus or navigation bar. And this side you have the user profile or sign in sign up option. So this constitutes the header. Then you will have a footer. Footer will have a reload screen option for forced reload or refresh of this screen content. And if you have a contact provided, then that will show up here. Also header and footer, and header is already having the navigation, and then you have the central section, which is basically the content section that keeps changing with your different URLs or different menu options that you have used. So for example, if I click on sign in, everything remains the same, the header and footer remains the same, but the central or middle section changes, right? So this is changing. Now, this section is content section. When I start with the application, I want to display something. That is called the home screen. Without login, if I want to see, what do I want to see, or what do I want to display to the end user? I want to display something on the landing page. So landing page is a common name given to the home screen. So you can basically customize a screen and then configure that as home screen, and you can put any content in that screen and configure here as home screen for your app, and that will be displayed as your landing page. Okay, right? So by default, it will start with an empty screen. It will have no content. The content will be empty, only header and footer, and no content in the beginning. You start navigating and you get more content. All right. So home screen is by default empty if it is not configured. How do you create this screen? The option is here, design and screen management. We will get into that section a little later, but here you are configuring the application through a custom screen. The next thing is layout. Now I told you that the default layout has a header, content, footer. These three layers vertically, one over the other. Header at the top, then content, and then bottom. This is the standard layout for every application. Now you want a customization. For example, you already observed that in this small screen view, it has a different layout. There is no header basically. The entire screen is like a content screen, and then I have a header actually coming down. The navigation is at the bottom. Now, there is a little different layout, out-of-box layout also for the small screens. You will see that if we want to see this TUP app in small screen, then we will see how the default layout shows up for small. So for small screens, default layout doesn't show the header. It actually hides the header and footer, and it basically shows the content part only, right? So here you are seeing header, footer, and content. In small screen, the same app shows only the content. But where is the header and footer then? It is here. So if you click on this triple bar, it brings up this small screen overlaying the content, and here you see the header and the footer, right? This becomes the header and this becomes the footer. And the navigation also changes. Here it was horizontal and here it becomes vertical, right? So a slightly different layout, and you can actually show and hide this. This is just to save the screen space for more and more content, right? We basically want to see more of content than the static header and footer. So this is the out-of-box layout for small screens. However, you can customize it. As you observed, here we have customized it completely. So the customization is done again using this option. So I define a layout and I can put anything anywhere, but normally I will have at least one place for the content section. Now content is available as a component. We will see that once we start creating a custom screen. There are many ready-made components. One of them is content. So it is suggested that when you are defining a screen for your layout, you should have at least one section for content, and then you can place anything and everything. I mean, that's your choice. You don't want to put navigation, out-of-box navigation, you can decide to do that. You don't want to put footer, you don't want to put header, out-of-box. Okay, you can customize it. You can simply customize everything, but you should have at least one placeholder for content so that your navigation, your screen still works, because this is not a regular screen, this is a layout screen. Okay, so you should have a content section on your layout screen. All right, we will get into the custom layouts for this application little later. The next option that you have for app configuration is primary menu. Now, platform builds a bit of menu option out of box. However, you can always add to it and in fact override that with your custom menu option. This menu creation is done through design menu. Okay, we'll get into the details of that later. But once you define the menu, just configure that here in your application as primary menu, and then that becomes the primary menu, something like this here. So this upper section that you see, dashboard, transaction, account setting, report, is a custom menu defined in this application and added here. You might have already observed that here also I have a custom menu. Now, this is defined and added here. So custom menu is the application's navigation. However, platform adds some additional content into the navigation depending on who you are or who is logged in. For example, when I'm logged in as a super admin for this application, some of the menus are by default added additionally apart from the primary menu. Some additional menu options are added. These are the developer options, and these are also kind of developer options, but these are not really developer options. These are CRUD screen menus for the custom objects or business objects that you have defined. In this application, we have a business object type called category type. We have another one called currency. We have called report, right? So these are custom business objects. And then I wanted to have a menu option enabled for these so that I can go through its out-of-box CRUD screens. I will go to that in a while once I complete the description of app config. But this gives me ways to manage the objects, which are either reports or category type or currency, basically any custom business object. All right. We'll define the business objects and then we'll say add this or show this in the standard navigation, and accordingly it will be displayed or not displayed. Of course, it will be displayed only if I have the right access permissions, and once it is displayed, I can do the rest of the activity related to that business object. All right. Okay. So the last thing that you see here is the style sheet. Now, you might have already observed that each of these apps are following certain fonts and background color and font color and several other things, right? Like how to display the menus, what will be the highlighting color, all that. If you want to have customization on top of that, or little modification to complete override of the standard styling, you can do that. And you can do that using an overriding style definition. What happens is this platform has put all the style definitions into one place, and which is available publicly. And then you can have an overriding style sheet definition for that. So whatever you provide here will be taking precedence over the default. For example, app title color is white. Now, if you observe, app title color is white everywhere, and so is here as well. It will be visible here, right? Now, I want to change it to yellow. In this application, it was taken as white, but I want to display black color, in black color, red color, whatever, or any such style changes. I need to have an overriding definition of the app title style class. Now this is where it is getting a little programmer oriented. For overriding the style, you need to have the knowledge of CSS, cascading style sheet language. Okay, so once you know CSS, you will appreciate the power of CSS through various style definitions. The good thing is there are a lot of style definitions provided through the platform, which you can override, and you see some of the options here. You can define new styles and use in many of your custom screens and components. For example, button round, button wide, these are custom styles which is used in some places in the custom screen and components defined only in this application. You don't see button round or button wide in the base platform, right? So you can override or provide the definition for the base HTML tags like input, how input box should show up. This is for small screens, so 800 pixel and less. How will it show up? So those customizations are done for only small screen, right? So you get the full power of style, definition, and overriding, and that's how you manage your UX, user experience, for your app. All right. And then final thing is email configuration. At this stage, I'll not talk about that, but basically you provide some of the credentials and your POP server and SMTP server details, but I'll not touch that now. I'll talk about that a little later. All right, so to summarize, what are the app configurations that you can provide? Name, one-liner description, ID is already provided. You can provide a logo image. It should be small, but you can upload. Provide a contact email if you want to show it as a mail option in the footer. Permitted public actions, custom mount screen, custom layout, custom primary menu, and custom style. A lot of customization, a lot of overriding options. It starts with default. You can modify it as per your choice, and then you can have a very customized application experience for your end users, right? So to edit, you can click on edit button, and the same thing gets into an edit form view. You can make modifications, and once you make the modification, you can simply save it, and once you save it, your changes are deployed immediately, right? So that is how you get it, get the changes implemented right away. For the next login or refresh, you will see the changes right away. I will do a little change in style. For example, I say instead of white, make it yellow, the app title. Let's remember what we want to change. So I say app title, which is displayed here, which is white, show it in yellow. I'll most likely roll it back because yellow is not what we want. We want white. But for the time being, I will just, for experiment, I am changing. So I am applying this change. Okay, so made a change, doing a save. It will take a little bit of time to save. Why? Because save is very fast, but it has to kind of restart this application. When the application is deployed on the server, so it has to reload the entire configuration. So flush out the caches and reload it, and then it will be available. Let me refresh this, or let me access it again. Yeah, so you see the application font color has changed, the title color has changed, right? So it is that simple, and it is live, it is effective immediately. That's the power of this platform. You make the changes, you realize it immediately. You want to roll back, you remember the last state, change it back. So that's what I'm going to do now. I knew it was white. I'll go back and make the change again. I'll put it back to white, save it again. It will reload the configuration on the server after saving. And it's actually reloading. Now, talking a little bit about the deployment, an application can be deployed in multiple instances of that app host can be created, which is managed through the deployment. And basically, when you are changing the app configuration, it should be replicated on all of those deployments. So it takes a little bit of time when you are making changes. which needs to be propagated to all of the server instances. And it has already been done. Let me refresh, and it should now change to white. Right? So changing the style is this easy. All right. So this is about the app configuration. Now in this, we talked about custom screens, we talked about custom menu. All right. So we'll take a look at custom screen for home, and then we'll take a quick look, and then we'll pause for today. And then next time we will talk about the other development capabilities. So to get to this screen definition, I can simply click here, or I can search for this on the design screen list, both ways. So let me use this quick navigation option. If I click on this, it will take me directly to that definition, or I can go through the listing and search, or that's the standard way. But because I have a quick access navigation possible from here, I will prefer this, right? So I simply click on this and it will open the screen definition for home screen. Okay, now here you see a lot of things. Screen is an object definition, a custom object in this context, which has a name, description, and some of the attributes like applicable to which application, which category of the application, and which action on that category. We'll talk about what this category is, what action is, when we start talking about the business objects or category definition, business data category definition. So let's park this for now. What is important here is the layout. Screen layout is the most important thing. Layout is defined here. What you see here is the outcome. But how did I define this layout? So to see the layout definition, I need to get into the edit mode. So click on edit, and it will open this up. Now you see, this is a little different than what you saw there. So the outcome that you saw on view screen is the final outcome. It's like a live mode. And here what you see is basically the preview mode. So there are three modes of your layout: live mode, preview mode, and design mode. So you started with live mode, then when you are in edit, you are actually seeing a preview mode. And when I start editing the layout itself, so these are the properties of the screen definition, but one of the property is layout. Layout is basically the configuration of the layout. And if I have to edit that, then I need to press this edit button here, right? We are inside the form of home screen here. So it has its own save, but we are going deeper and we are modifying the layout. So once I modify the layout, I need to save that and then come back to this screen and save the whole configuration. Then only the whole definition will be saved, right? So it's like nested objects. You have a complex home screen definition, and then it has a attribute which is an object in itself. Layout is an object. So layer by layer, you will modify, you will save and keep saving layer by layer, and finally you save the whole object. All right. This is a common pattern that you will see everywhere. All right. So let's go into the edit mode of this layer. And then this is the magic. This is the VisiVig editor for the given layout. This screen has this layout. What you see here is the edit mode or design mode of the same layout. So you started with live mode, then you had a preview mode, and this is the design mode. Okay, so this is design mode, and then I have some of the options. This is the most powerful capability that you have as a UX customization option. And here you are defining custom screens that can be used as custom components You will see in due course how I defined some of the small screen snippets which are being used as a component, which is equivalent to a custom built React component. If you are going to use React or Angular, so the components concept is available here itself. All right, so this screen has this canvas. Canvas has various components nested and placed together. And what is that nesting? You can see it in the content tree here, right? So this is basically a tree of UI components. If you're familiar with HTML, which you have to be for creating a web application, you should at least know HTML. So you know there is a hierarchy of elements, which is called document object model. You have HTML at the top, then you have head and body. Inside body, you have various divs, and inside div, you can have rest of the content like table or PE or inputs and everything, right? So the same hierarchical approach is followed here as well, and it has many components placed here. So you can expand this tree and you can observe what is the structure. So it starts with the section component, and then section component had a couple of children's section components. So the upper section is here, and then lower section is here. You see the nesting, which is visible on the designer itself. So the outermost boundary, this broken line, indicates the boundary of the component. This component has two inner sections, two inner boundaries, which is indicative of these two sections. And then you go deeper. This inner boundary, for example, has one section here and another. So two children, so two boundaries. And this bottom boundary is a layout renderer, and this is basically a custom component. All right, so we will talk about that later. But here I have a layer, and then this section has another component called printer component, right? So printer component is embedded inside the section, and then next one was layout renderer. Here we had a section which has what? Which has a layout renderer again. So this is also a layout render. This one is layout renderer. So another component embedded here, another screen basically embedded here. Layout renderer is related to a screen being embedded, right? So a screen is defined somewhere, and here we say embed that screen. So a screen can be made with a combination of many screens with other components. Screen itself becomes a component. All right, so what components are available? There are plenty of components available out of box, and we'll learn about them gradually one by one. You have already seen many like section, printer, layout renderer in this case, and then all the components that are available for this designer is available in this section, component sections. Let me minimize this content tree. If I don't want to see it all, I can simply hide this. It will get minimized, and then components are listed in various tabs. So I click on tab. Each component has a purpose, and I can simply press on these, and if I want to place it somewhere, for example, I want to place it inside this section, I can press the plus button, and the highlighted one, the selected component, will get added. For the time being, I will just try it. I will not save it. And if I did this, a button component gets added. And if I don't want to have it, I select this button component and press on this delete button or remove button. That will be removed. Or I can do a drag and drop as well. So I take this button, keep the mouse down, and move it onto the canvas, and you see as I move, different sections are getting highlighted. Following the border, I know where I'm placing. Okay, so I can place here in this section, and it will have the same effect. Or I can put things in the content tree as well, right? So I had placed things here. Okay, so remove it. I can expand this once again and simply take it from here and place it over here, right? So 3 ways of adding a component. I can simply select and press the plus button in the container component, it will get added. I drag and drop from here to canvas or drag and drop to the content tree and the right place, it will get added, right? So this is the beautiful capability that is provided here. And once I add the component, each component has certain properties. Every component has certain property predefined, which we can specify value of. Then it has some lifecycle events, and then it has certain global event handling subscriptions or registration that we can do. We'll talk about these one by one for different cases, and we will learn about those. All right, so once I have my screen changes made, I actually don't want to make any change right now, so I will remove this. I basically save or simply close this. So all my changes that I have made here will be actually preserved, but it is preserved temporarily. It is added to this screen definition, but it is still not saved on the system because that's an internal property, right? So once I make the changes in layout, do not forget to save the screen definition. Unless I save the screen definition, the changes are not effective. But because I didn't want to make any change, I can simply cancel the edits, and every change that I made will become null and void, and it will take me back to the previous screen. Right, so I cancel and it will take me back to the edit screen, the view screen for this screen object. You see set permissions option in many places. This allows you to allow others or share access to others in your application, right? I keep reminding that everything starts with zero trust, but you want to you trust some user, you want to give them view permission or edit permission. You can do that as the owner, as the creator. You have the right to share access with others, and that's a quick way of sharing accesses, view access, or edit access to anyone else. If you want to see all the screen definitions, you can click on this view all here, or you come back to the main menu, design and screen. Both will take you to the same place. In this case, view all is a quick access menu, equivalent of pressing the design and screen. It takes you to screen list. And basically here you have all of your custom screens. So in this application, we have created plenty of custom screens, which are used as components in many other places. For example, income quick view small screen will be used as a component in a list income small screen and income report as well. You have multiple items to list, so it iterates over that, and then the data is actually displayed through this custom screen definition. So we have used the platform extensively in this application. Some of the features that you see right now, for example, this one is out of box screen. We have not customized the screen listing screen itself. So this is also quite nice. It has navigations. By the way, this is a component called filter result. So we have the feature of defining filters. When you define the data category, you can define filters, use that in many other scenarios. So in our subsequent sessions, we will talk about this menu more extensively, which is the backbone, which is basically where the application is created. starting with business object definition and then custom business logic through triggers and functions. We'll talk about job runs when the right time comes. That is about scheduled triggers and its execution instances. The last thing that we will talk about in our future sessions is about access management. We have already seen user management, a bit of that, but we can see more of that here. But then the concept of user group and user roles, and more importantly, the concept of resources, where we are actually setting the permissions. I told you about that screen where you can set permissions for the view of that specific screen object. Similarly, you can define many more resources and manage the access permissions. All right, so that's all for today. And then in our subsequent session, as I said, we'll talk about other developer options. Any question for now?
No, sir.
All right, so I'm stopping the recording.